exclusive reports have just surfaced confirming that Blake Lively and her high-powered legal team may have knowingly misled the judge in her ongoing courtroom battle, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Courtroom insiders are calling this the boldest legal miscalculation of the year, and sources close to the investigation say the judge is absolutely furious with what he just discovered. This isn't just a legal blunder. This could be the final nail in the coffin for Blake Lively's crumbling defense, as newly unsealed records and conflicting sworn statements reveal a potential conspiracy to obstruct the very foundation of justice itself in a shocking twist that no one saw coming. Sealed transcripts leaked early this morning suggests that Blake Lively and her team may have intentionally provided misleading documentation to the judge during a closed evidentiary hearing. The documents in question, which were initially accepted without dispute, were supposedly meant to verify a timeline crucial to Blake's defense, a timeline that placed her in Europe during the days key witnesses claimed she was orchestrating back-channel communications in Los Angeles, but now new digital evidence, including airport surveillance metadata and private jet flight logs, contradicts that story entirely, suggesting not only was Blake present in Los Angeles during those exact dates, but that she may have attended at least 2 off-the-record meetings with individuals previously denied in testimony under oath. This stunning development has sent shockwaves through the legal community. But what's more alarming is how the lie was uncovered. According to a whistleblower working within the Federal Aviation Data Division, a private compliance request flagged discrepancies in fuel records for a chartered jet allegedly tied to a dummy shell company whose ownership traces back to an offshore trust with connections to Blake's inner circle. The moment that data was handed to the court, everything began to unravel. During a hastily called emergency hearing late last night, the presiding judge reportedly confronted Blake's attorneys with the new evidence and demanded clarification. Not only did the attorneys fail to provide a clear response, but one was allegedly caught on a hot mic whispering that the backup plan had to go live immediately within hours. Damage control emails were sent to multiple media outlets claiming that the data leak was fake and manipulated by bad actors attempting to influence public perception. But here's the catch: a second independent audit of the flight logs from a third-party aviation data firm confirmed the accuracy of the whistleblower's information, and when the judge was notified of this corroboration, the tone in the courtroom shifted completely. Observers present say the judge's demeanor went from controlled skepticism to stone-cold disbelief. A legal analyst following the case said bluntly, "This morning, this is no longer a case of blurred facts. This is perjury, obstruction, and calculated misrepresentation before a sitting judge." And that's where things get even more serious, because under federal law, knowingly submitting false evidence or misleading the court is a felony, and if proven, it could result in sanctions, disbarment of involved attorneys, and even criminal charges for everyone complicit in the deception, including Blake Lively herself. Now, with the judge reportedly ordering a formal forensic review of every document submitted by Blake's legal team, the court is essentially preparing for a full-scale integrity audit which could completely dismantle her entire case strategy and reset the legal landscape in ways no one anticipated. And what makes this even more explosive is the fact that this isn't the first time questions have been raised about irregularities in Blake's legal timeline, but this is the first time there's been verifiable proof that someone may have tampered with or falsified that narrative. Sources close to the courthouse say federal prosecutors are already drafting inquiries into whether Blake's legal team violated multiple codes of conduct and whether any of her advisors or staff could face charges as co-conspirators, because if the court concludes that this was a deliberate effort to mislead, then everyone involved could be pulled into a new investigation. And here's where things take an even darker turn. Rumors are now circulating that this strategy of manufactured timelines and false testimony may not have originated with Blake's current team at all, but with a now retired legal crisis consultant who previously worked with other disgraced celebrities involved in multi-million-dollar cover-ups, and who is suspected of operating a covert network that teaches elite clients how to manipulate courtroom narratives using fabricated digital footprints, staged alibis, and coordinated witness conditioning. If this link is proven, it could trigger an entirely separate federal probe and ignite a legal firestorm that stretches far beyond Blake Lively's case, exposing a playbook that may have influenced outcomes in numerous celebrity scandals over the last decade. For now, the judge has ordered an indefinite pause on all further motions until the forensic review is complete and any individuals found to have submitted false Materials could be subpoenaed and charged with obstruction and fraud. So what does this mean for Blake? It means everything she's tried to protect can now fall apart: her credibility, her career, her financial empire, and possibly even her freedom, as the courtroom fallout intensified the ripple effect of Blake Lively's alleged deception began spreading faster than even her legal team could contain, according to multiple insiders familiar with the judge's private chambers. The moment the confirmation came through that the flight logs were legitimate, the tone of the entire trial shifted. What was once a carefully choreographed legal performance collapsed into pure, unfiltered chaos. One official described the atmosphere in the courtroom as the moment a storm hits glass, and it became immediately clear that this was no longer a matter of celebrity misconduct. This was now a federal problem. Within hours of the emergency hearing ending, subpoenas were being quietly reissued, this time not only to members of Blake's team but also to third-party contractors who may have participated in altering travel documentation, digital timestamps, and communications logs. Tech experts from multiple forensic firms were summoned to begin backtracking the entire chain of custody for every file submitted to the court since the trial began. What they've uncovered so far, according to one source, is a tangled web of metadata inconsistencies, masked IP addresses, and digitally altered PDFs that appear to have been edited just days before submission. But perhaps the most damning piece of evidence came not from the flight logs or the timestamps, but from a deleted email chain recovered from a cloud storage backup belonging to one of Blake's junior legal aides. The emails were laced with frantic language references to a timeline fix and multiple mentions of a senior partner giving the green light to suppress conflicting details. A message dated 3 days before the initial hearing read clearly, "Delete all drafts, version 4 is the only one we go with per BL instruction." BL instruction, those two words have now become the focus of an entirely new inquiry, because if prosecutors confirm that those initials refer to Blake Lively and that she personally approved the removal or falsification of evidence, it could escalate her status from witness to primary target of a criminal obstruction case. Media outlets began camping outside her legal headquarters within minutes of the leak breaking, and while her PR team has refused to comment, the silence only deepened the suspicion. Even entertainment news networks, once loyal to protecting her image, have now pivoted the narrative, calling this the most irresponsible act of courtroom deceit since the Toronto's collapse. But the shock doesn't end there, because now legal analysts are saying this trial may be thrown out completely and refiled under entirely new terms, shifting the judge's role from impartial overseer to potential material witness in a cover-up case. Blake's own lawyers may now be disqualified from further representation due to conflict of interest, and the Bar Association is already reviewing complaints against at least 3 members of her defense team. And there's more. Confidential source from within the court system leaked that Blake's team has officially requested an emergency closed-door conference with federal officials, possibly signaling a deal negotiation or a desperate attempt to avoid further exposure. Whatever is happening behind the scenes, one thing is absolutely clear: this isn't just about a lie. This is about the unraveling of a defense strategy built entirely on illusion. The courtroom was already under pressure, the judge's tone already colder than ice, when the final blow came in the form of a quietly submitted sealed affidavit from a former staff member on Blake Lively's internal legal team. This staffer, who had remained silent for months, suddenly flipped, providing what insiders are calling the smoking gun. Not only did the affidavit confirm that Blake was fully aware of the false timeline submitted to the court, but it claimed she directly instructed the team to proceed because the truth would be too damaging to her brand. Let that sink in. Not because the truth was criminal, but because it was inconvenient. The affidavit was packed with damning specifics, dates, times, private message screenshots, voice memos, allegedly from Blake herself, saying things like, "Just make sure it doesn't trace back to me, and we've controlled worse before." The document laid bare a deliberate strategy to build a defense on half-truths, knowing full well the court would never look deep enough to find the cracks. But someone did, and now the affidavit is not only in the judge's hands, it's reportedly been referred to the Department of Justice. Blake's team tried to downplay it, tried to argue that the former aide was bitter, disgruntled, retaliating after being let go, but that narrative collapsed when digital forensics confirmed the authenticity of the message history timestamps, matched geolocation data, voice samples aligned with archived interviews. It was real, and worse, it showed that the lie didn't just happen, it was designed, orchestrated. Rehearsed and distributed like a screenplay, suddenly everything began to fall apart. The judge, who had remained calm and composed until now, suddenly ordered that all prior testimonies be reviewed again, especially those from Blake's expert witnesses and digital consultants. These were the same people who swore under oath that the timeline was sound, the data was verified, the defense was airtight, and now it seemed every word they spoke was part of a larger fabricated narrative. In response, the prosecution launched a motion for fraud upon the court, one of the most serious legal accusations a case can face. It's not just lying under oath, it's a systematic attempt to undermine the entire function of the judiciary. It's illegal. Equivalent of arson, burning down the House of Justice while pretending to live in it. And what came next shocked even seasoned trial reporters. The judge removed the gag order from key parts of the sealed record, releasing a tranche of internal communications to the public, and within hours social media exploded. Millions of people saw the truth, raw, unfiltered screenshots, proving the cover-up, confirming what critics had long suspected, and exposing the exact moment when fame stopped protecting Blake and started incriminating her. Hashtags began trending internationally. Hashtag gladly lied, #timeline tamper, #justice for truth, and suddenly her inner circle, who had spent years protecting her image, were now deleting accounts, disappearing from interviews. Even her most loyal publicists issued a cryptic post that read, "There's only so much one can spin." And as the judge prepared for what could become a full evidentiary hearing on the new criminal allegations, the walls around Blake began to tighten, not just metaphorically but legally, because now subpoenas were going out not only to her legal team but to former friends, former business partners, even family members who might have knowledge of the deception. And in the middle of it all, one question echoed louder than ever before: how deep does this go? As investigators dug deeper, the depth of the deception surrounding Blake Lively's legal war wasn't just unsettling, it was unprecedented. The evidence no longer pointed to a moment of panic or a single poor decision. It pointed to a deliberate, coordinated campaign spanning months, possibly years, involving multiple players across legal media and corporate domains. This wasn't just a defense gone wrong. This was the machinery of celebrity privilege grinding against the gears of federal justice. Emails retrieved from encrypted cloud archives revealed a chilling discovery. Months before the trial even began, Blake's inner circle had mapped out a plan called internally Project Velvet Curtain, a strategy document nearly 60 pages long, outlining how to control media narrative, exploit legal loopholes, and create redundant timelines in case one defense fell through. It wasn't a legal plan, it was a crisis simulation complete with media rehearsals, digital alibi drills, and contingency bribes disguised as consulting fees. Worse still was the revelation that this playbook had been used before, allegedly in previous cases that never made it to court. Settlements paid under the radar, non-disclosure agreements signed in shadowy hotel conference rooms. The truth now unraveling wasn't about one moment in court, it was about an entire ecosystem designed to keep Blake's name clean, regardless of what had to be buried along the way. And now, with every buried secret clawing its way back into the light, the judge issued a formal notice expanding the investigation scope. Blake was no longer just a defendant, she was now under preliminary review for criminal conspiracy and perjury. Inside sources say the federal grand jury has been activated, a secret panel already reviewing the data handed over from the court's forensic unit, and the word inside legal circles is chilling. If even half of what's in those emails and logs is proven, Blake Lively could face serious federal charges, the kind that carry years in prison, not fines, not community service, but felony-level consequences. Meanwhile, behind the cameras, Blake's legal team is reported to be imploding. One senior partner quietly resigned without a statement. Another was seen leaving the courthouse visibly shaken, refusing to answer questions when pressed about his role in preparing the timeline documents. The once glamorous shield of polished defense attorneys is now shattered, leaving behind a fractured team, scrambling to save themselves. And the public isn't waiting. Major streaming platforms have begun quietly pausing future projects with Blake. Advertisers once lining up for endorsements are pulling out. Press outlets once complicit in soft peddling her scandals are now turning full force against her. Documentaries are being drafted, investigations compiled. One producer reportedly told an insider, "This case is going to be the new O.J. for the digital age." And in the shadows, former allies are starting to speak. Not on the record, not yet, but in whispers, feeding reporters details, giving investigators names, suggesting that the legal lie wasn't just Blake's idea, but A standard procedure used by more celebrities than the public ever knew. One thing is clear now: Blake Lively is not the untouchable icon she once was. She's no longer above the law, no longer hidden by handlers. The courtroom sees her, the judge sees her, the world sees her, and no matter what defense her team scrambles to piece together next, the truth has already broken through the curtain. By the time the courtroom reconvened, the air was different, colder, sharper, almost electric. Everyone could feel it. The tension was no longer about whether Blake Lively had lied. It was about how much and who else helped her do it. The judge stepped in without the usual formality, skipping pleasantries and going straight to the heart of the matter, announcing that multiple sworn statements had now been contradicted by digital records, forensic evidence, and at least one confirmed insider leak. The courtroom went silent, and then the judge said two words that shattered the entire illusion: criminal referral. Gasps erupted. Reporters scrambled to get signals out from their devices. Even veteran lawyers seemed frozen in place. It wasn't just about contempt or procedural misconduct anymore. The judge had formally stated on record that parts of Blake Lively's legal defense may have been criminal in nature and were being handed off to the Department of Justice for investigation. Blake's face remained frozen, but her posture cracked. For the first time, she didn't look confident or composed. She looked trapped. Because the judge's next statement was even worse. He confirmed that sealed documents included evidence of document fabrication, witness coaching, and intentional misrepresentation of facts during cross-examination. And that wasn't all. Two members of her defense team were no longer in court. They had withdrawn their representation hours earlier, one citing an irreconcilable conflict of interest, the other under sudden review by the state bar for potential ethical violations. And in the void their absence left, federal investigators had entered the courtroom not as observers but as participants. A federal attorney stepped forward and submitted a motion to preserve all remaining communication records associated with Project Velvet Curtain, the secret crisis plan that had now become the centerpiece of the government's criminal case against Blake Lively. This wasn't a trial anymore. This was a takedown operation unfolding live in front of the world, and it was only just beginning. As the news broke outside the courthouse, chaos erupted. Fans who once defended her online began deleting their posts. Influencer accounts that had cheered for her began walking back their support. Even celebrity allies went dark. No more Instagram stories, no more tweets, no public statements. The silence was deafening and telling because no one wanted to be next. A separate leak from inside the district attorney's office revealed that names mentioned within the Velvet Curtain documents are being cross-referenced for new subpoenas. Agents were already preparing to question at least 7 individuals closely tied to the execution of the cover-up, including a PR firm executive, 2 former assistants, and 1 high-ranking media consultant with ties to several major networks. Meanwhile, Blake herself was said to be under security lockdown at a private compound in upstate New York. Not house arrest yet, but suspiciously close. She had canceled all public appearances and was reportedly considering a full legal strategy reversal, including a potential plea bargain. But here's the twist: the judge issued a final order before adjournment requiring a full public release of all evidence not marked classified or sensitive to national security, meaning the public would see the full scope of lies, forged documents, falsified testimony, and communications that painted a horrifying picture of celebrity manipulation at its most dangerous. This was no longer about Blake Lively's freedom. It was about exposing a system built to protect people like her. The following morning, the internet erupted as the first wave of declassified evidence was released under the judge's order. PDFs, message logs, audio files, surveillance snapshots, and fragments of correspondence between Blake Lively, her lawyers, her PR machinery, and private investigators. It was all there in plain sight, and nothing was left to interpretation. The lies weren't subtle. They emergency evidentiary review behind closed doors. Insiders reported that what was discussed during that meeting was so explosive, so deeply tied to national exposure of corruption within the celebrity legal ecosystem that additional federal agencies had now become involved, including financial crime units and cybersecurity task forces. Rumors swirled that international money transfers were being investigated, some possibly linked to offshore accounts designed to support Project Velvet Curtain's cover-up, and the judge ordered a court-monitored seizure of all remaining electronic devices under Blake's control, not just her personal ones, but those used by staff assistants and former legal consultants. In the span of 2 weeks, she went from the Hollywood elite to the centerpiece of one of the most intense federal probes and entertainment history, and still the public waited because everyone knew what was coming next. A full-scale indictment was just one signature away. The Blake Lively scandal didn't end with a single gavel drop. It ended with the collapse of an empire. Brick by brick, the illusion fell apart. Her fame, her lawyers, her carefully curated image, none of it could survive the weight of the truth. Once the lies were exposed and her voice caught on tape, the world realized this wasn't just another celebrity caught in controversy. This was a blueprint of manipulation and systemic deceit carried out in full view. Project Velvet Curtain became the symbol of Hollywood's darkest secrets, a machine built to rewrite timelines, destroy evidence, and silence those who dared to speak out. But in the end it failed because the truth was louder, stronger, and more enduring than any PR campaign. With her friends gone, her reputation in ruins, and the law now closing in, Blake Lively was no longer the beloved actress or red carpet royalty. She was a case study in what happens when power goes unchecked, when arrogance replaces accountability, and as her indictment looms in public opinion hardens, one final truth becomes impossible to deny. Blake Lively didn't just lose a case, she lost the world's trust, and in the eyes of millions, that's a sentence far worse than prison.